All right, for more on this, Daniel Schrag, Professor of Environmental Science and Engineering and Director of the Harvard University Center for the Environment, joins us live from Cambridge. Mr. Schrag, thank you so much for joining us right here on WION The World. Sir, the storm weakened from Category 5 to Category 3 when it struck Florida. Intensity of the storm can change again. What's the damage at this point, and which are some of the worst hit areas?
Well, it's the middle of the night in Florida right now, and the winds are still blowing. The rain is still coming down. Reports were in St. Petersburg, which is well north of where the storm center was. There was 5 inches of rain, or, nearly 12 centimeters, over 12 centimeters of rain in 1 hour. That's an extraordinary amount of rainfall. And that's happening right now. And so it's too early to assess the damage. Tomorrow morning, when the sun comes up and the storm has passed over Florida into the Atlantic, that will be the time to assess the damage. Right now, this is an incredibly large storm and affecting a very large area of Florida.
Sir, what are the preparations looking like at this point leading up to this?
Well, Florida is not surprised by hurricanes. I think the surprise of this one was how quickly it grew. Sunday night, this wasn't even a hurricane, and it just became a hurricane late Sunday night. And by the middle of the day on Monday, it was already a Category 4 storm, and by the mid-afternoon, it was a Category 5 storm, the highest category, with winds over 160 miles per hour. Really extraordinary growth, and that we think is due to the fact that the Gulf of Mexico is so warm, and it's warm because the whole world is warming up, and that adds to the risk.
Mr. Schrag, President Biden has urged everyone to listen to the advice of local officials. Do you feel there is some kind of reluctance among people to evacuate still, or authorities are, or the warnings being given by authorities are not being taken seriously in the midst of this kind of a storm?
Well, unfortunately, for a storm this big, and there was a lot of uncertainty about just how powerful the winds were going to be when it actually made landfall. It was a Category 5 storm this morning, but it was expected to weaken because as it came close to the coast, there were winds, high altitude winds that were disrupting the hurricane. And that's a good thing. That meant that it was going to weaken. But let's be clear, it's great that it wasn't a Category 5 storm with winds over 160 miles an hour. But when it made landfall, it still had winds at 120 miles an hour. And that can do incredible damage, tearing houses apart. Not as bad as a Category 5 storm, but still very damaging. As soon as it makes landfall, it weakens enormously, but still very high winds, and that can cause a lot of problems. People don't like to leave their homes in these situations. They like to say, I'm just going to stay in my home and do the best I can. The problem is, if this was a slightly stronger storm, no home would be safe. And we've seen this in a variety of places around Florida. When the storms get really big, the damage can be so great that no place is safe.
Well, here's hoping that people are safe and they can safely return to their homes and the damage is at the minimal. Here's only what one can hope for. Of course, we'll need to wait and watch. Of course, for people in Florida, they're not new to this kind of or at least for storms coming in. But the way this one has escalated, as you mentioned earlier, that has really taken everyone by surprise. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. That was Professor Daniel Schrag joining me.